Why do I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Deanne Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it? What do we do about it, Deanne? What do we do about it?
I don't know what to do. We were just talking about that I didn't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I need to learn.
It's okay. It's all about having power, control, and dominion. This is what we were talking about in our previous episode, and the U.S. aggression to be able to get that. And, you know, what are some of the strategies that are being used to be able to get that power and dominion? The U.S. is particularly good. White ideology is particularly good about being able to do that. Having a common enemy.
Right. It's like the only time that humanity comes together is when there's a common enemy. And you and I were talking just before we came on here about whether or not indigenous cultures move like that. You know, that is there the difference between, and I'm probably like greatly reducing the complexity, but maybe not, the difference between collective power and individualistic power.
Mm-hmm.
If we're thinking about the world and humanity as a collective, and we connect the earth to that collective, then we don't need to have power and dominance over somebody or something else, because we're in symbiotic flow.
That's the goal. That's the North Star. That should be the core of our ideologies and our understanding, is that we do not have to be in competition. We do not have to have a common enemy. That's all. We can exist collectively because there's so much resource going on. We have to learn methods and mechanisms of being able to share that resource equitably amongst all of the people, and understand that people are so much more important than property. But U.S. ideology holds property as the value space rather than people as the value space. And how do we get to holding people as the value space? But technology is going to allow us to do that, because it's telling us that, you know, people don't matter. We're the problem. We're the ones that are like sucking all the resources of the earth anyway. Until we start to realize how we do that differently, because when it comes to the place where we have given technology all of our power, which we're doing, we were talking about how it's really even becoming harder to write, to remember how to spell things, to remember numbers, because we're so used to giving all of that power over to technology, some of like those human methods of like being able to communicate with one another.
At the time that we're recording this, Verizon, one of the bigger phone carriers for those that are outside of the U.S., I'm sure Verizon operates all over the globe, but they had a huge outage the other day that was hours long, if not, you know, almost a full day, and everybody's phones were bricks. And I started thinking about it. I thought, you know, I need to write people's phone numbers down, because I don't remember anybody. I barely remember my own phone number, much less. And then I thought, well, all of those phone numbers go to cell phones. So if the grid goes down, none of those numbers are going to work. And then I started thinking, do I need to get a landline again? You know, because I haven't had a landline in forever, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, just thinking about power and the strategies that the people that are in power in our global society, how they function, and one of the things that we were a little bit touching on in the last episode and wanted to talk a little deeper dive on this one was the strategy of divide and conquer.
Absolutely. Which is an age-old strategy. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it is as old as time in memoriam, right? And how we see it manifesting in very blatant ways, but then also in ways that sometimes, I don't know if this happens for you, but sometimes I find myself like not seeing the divide and conquer in the beginning. And then like when I start to dig into some of the layers, I'm like, oh, this is just divide and shocker. So, and I don't know if that's because of, the lens that I'm seeing things through or what, but
if we're talking about like current events right now, like, in the last month, one of the premier hip hop artists, Nicki Minaj, went on stage with
Turning Point USA.
Yeah, Turning Point and Mrs. Kirk. It was she was on stage.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk's widow,
and professed a lot of things that were not typical of the way that she used to communicate through her music, through her fan base. And a lot of people were very, very harmed. And the U.S. responsiveness to that was that she's a foreigner, right? Now, so all of a sudden, like the acceptance that was granted to her previously, now because she's coming in opposition to a larger demographic of people who listen to her music and support her as a fan base, because there was harm, they were like, well, let's deport her, right? Which is then the common narrative of people who are at risk of being deported, even if they were U.S. born, because of the color of their skin. Now there's like this thing like, well, no, this is an other, and we should get her out of here because she is not being aligned. And I thought that was really interesting, specifically because somebody who has such a powerful position in the entertainment industry to have this showing of alignment with ideologies that are harmful for a majority of the people existing in the US, and then having this conversation about deporting her when we're having an amplification of ICE raids on targeting everyone. So you're not safe whether you come from a different origin country or you come from the United States, or as your origin country, you're not safe at all. And so it's a very interesting conversation, specifically in the Black community, because now you have people who are US born and people who are Caribbean born saying Caribbeans are the problem. Caribbeans need to get out here, at the same time that you have US aggression in Caribbean waters. And knowing that there is a race to be able to have power and control over the resources that are here. And so creating this like conflict amongst the people who don't have power helps to justify the movements of those who do have power. We also see this in the same way that you were talking about with Iranians against Palestinians. You want to explore that?
Yeah, it was interesting. In the last episode, I spoke into a conversation. It was really a messenger back and forth with a person that I'm friends with in the Baha'i community who identifies she's Iranian born and living in the US as a refugee because of what was happening in Iran, and still has family over in Iran. So for context, and she was asking me questions about some of the things that I was posting. And when I was reading her responses and kind of reading between the lines, what I was finding interesting was that she expressed that the keffiyeh that I wear around my neck and in a lot of my images, my profile pictures, things like that, I've got my keffiyeh earrings on right now for those who are watching. She said that scarf was triggering to her. And I thought that was so interesting because the keffiyeh is a symbol of Palestinian resistance against an oppressive regime that's been occupying their land for 78 years. And she, in her further dialogue, she was expressing that she was conflating, my word, conflating Palestinians with Islam and the Islamic government that now rules Iran, that she feels is the main oppressor for her and her people. She identifies as Baha'i, and Baha'is have been Baha'i is a religion that was born in Persia back in the 1800s, and Baha'is have been traditionally persecuted by the governments that were in place at the time in Persia, but Iran also. There are many Baha'is that are imprisoned and that have been persecuted and killed as a result of their belief system. So that's her context that she's coming from. But I thought it was so interesting in her discussing why she didn't like the fact that I was wearing a keffiyeh, as she called it, a scarf, was that she was seeing Palestinians as being the source of her pain. And I thought that was so interesting because I don't understand how you take one persecuted people and Palestinians are Muslim, they're Christian, they're Jewish, it's not Muslim. It's not a synonym for Muslim. But she was, she was expressing herself to me, that's how I feel like she was seeing it. So.
And the divide and conquer component of that is that Iranians and Palestinians support each other because they do have the same faith-based origin. So you're trying to divide and conquer a people that have some alignment so that you, again, can have power and control. When there's chaos amongst the people, then that allows a opportunity for you to come in and install power, but you're installing power in the way that you choose for it to be exercised. And so that is a part of the divide and conquer, because Iranians are supporting the actual Palestinian resistance, which is why Israel has come for attacking Iran in the way that they have, backed by US support. And so we have to be thinking about that the same way as the Caribbean, they want the resources, in the same way as what they're calling the Middle East, they want the resources, in the same way we're seeing also in the Congo and Nigeria, again, using religious persecution as a reason for being able to transgress. And that divide and conquer strategy, that they're using is what is harmful, that we need to be always thinking about checking in with who's holding the power and what is the strategy that they're using to be able to continue to expand the power.
Yeah. And if divide and conquer is the strategy, othering is the tool. You mentioned othering earlier.
I love that.
That is the core tool. That is it starts with othering. We watched that happen with Palestinians in the last 2.5 years and the last 78 years, but the awareness of the greater world community has really been the last 2.5. It starts with dehumanizing, right? It starts with telling you that this human being that is standing in front of you is not worthy of your care and consideration, and therefore should be exterminated. And so one of the things that you and I were talking about before we came online was the difference between individualistic power and collective power. Because you were saying, well, I don't mind having power and having control and agency over my work. I'm okay with that. I just don't want to do it at the expense of someone else. And to me, that's the difference between individualistic power, which is all about greed and more and bred and rooted in a narrative of lack, right? So I can't be told that somebody else is going to take something from me unless I believe that scarcity and lack is a thing. And so in the US territory, food insecurity is a narrative that we're constantly, and I'm not saying that people don't feel food insecurity. There are entire communities that absolutely feel food insecurity, but the fact that food insecurity even exists is the lack narrative, right? Because there's plenty of food in this country. I mean, there's food that is going bad in silos in the Midwest because nobody, we don't have systems in place to distribute and to say we're growing this grain, and if it can't be used in this issue or this issue or this situation, then let's feed it to the people who need it. That's a collective mindset. That's a collective power that we don't employ in the US. And I would dare say, all across the world, in any space where the traditional systems of power that as we know them right now exist, that collectivism doesn't exist. It's individualistic. And that I was thinking that maybe the indigenous mindset, not knowing, I want to explore this more. I want to learn more about this, whether or not the indigenous mindset is all based in collectiveness, in the collective power versus individualistic, and weaving the earth into that collective as part of it, not just humanity. So
that does remind me of a story where it's a social experiment that is occurring, and a person is on the continent of Africa. I'm not sure which country they're in, but there's an apple tree or something like that. And the challenge is for the young people, whoever reaches the apple tree first will get a prize. And so the man says, go. and none of the young people, nobody like takes off in the way that you would in the US, right? And running to try to get to the apple tree, but all of the young people move towards the apple tree together, right? And so the man is like thrown off and confused, like, I told you that whoever gets there first is going to win. And the young people are like, but the benefit is that if we all go together, we all can get the apples and we'll have more to go around. And it was like a mind-blowing moment for the person who was doing the social experiment to show that the cultural ideology is different. Collectivism actually produces more for the greater good, and individualism only allows one person to reap the benefits. Right. And then that one person that reaps the benefits then becomes the target of the needs of all the other people. So why would you even want to create that system and structure of competition and lack of consideration of your other fellow human beings? But that is a cultural ideology that's different. When I'm on the island of Jamaica, it's like so a different way that people care and consider each other. Even though there is a lot of need across the island, you still see like this humanity of being happy to just be alive, moving around, which is a different vibration, than wallowing in self-pity in the US because you're not having as much as what you might see somebody else having. And then there's a smaller percentage of people to this social experiment that was done. There's a smaller amount of people that actually have the resources. And so you have more people looking at those folks like, why aren't we able to get it in the same way? And then there's all kinds of confusion, chaos, in which case all of these systems of inequality can continue to be supported.
Yeah, because the confusion and chaos feeds the divide and conquer. It feeds the ultimate system, because when people are in disarray, when they are in chaos, when they are in a place of desperation, then they do the work for the people that are trying to create the power differential. It becomes their, desperate people do desperate things. And so that feeds all of that. We were talking about how divide and conquer plays in the U.S. political system, and it's the foundation of our U.S. political system, and it's why we have a two-party system. And for those of you who are listening, I'm using air quotes because it is a two-party system, but it's a manufactured two-party system, right? And we go through this every time we have an election, especially when every 4 years in the U.S. we have our presidential election and our national election. There are other election cycles that happen at different year intervals, but for the presidential, it's every 4. And it's the time that a lot of people get involved. A lot of people don't get involved at the midterm level when it's just halfway through a presidential term. But that's all by design, right? And so every 4 years, when we head towards into a presidential election, there's always the question, who's going to be the third party candidate? And then there's the meaning that they don't belong, they don't run for elected office under the banner of the Republicans or the Democrats, which are the two main. I'm only giving context for people that don't live in the U.S. And so, so there's always that question of who's going to be the third party candidate. And then becomes the arguing of that third party candidate is just a spoiler, just trying to split the vote and take the votes away from the main candidate that somewhat aligns ideologically with their mindset. And oh my God, every 4 years we go through this and
playing democracy, because that's what it is.
Playing democracy, right?
Because we're not actually experiencing democracy.
No, we're not.
Under this current administration, is even less and less that we're having a democratic political process, which is interesting, because I heard that you telling me that Donald Trump is trying to strip this political process even further down.
Yeah, he floated the other day. It was during an interview with one of the major news outlets that, maybe I'll just cancel the midterms because they're not going to be legal anyway. They're going to be illegal, which, the people that are the offenders are always the ones that accuse. Anytime any person that is in any level of power is accusing someone else of doing something to them, it's just their way of
gaslighting,
but admitting to what they do. So he's sitting there saying the midterms are going to be illegal, so maybe I'll just cancel them, which is because the primary elections are also illegal because he rigged the system. So not just he, many of the people in power have rigged the system. So yeah, he floated the idea of canceling the midterms only because the polling is showing that, and this is classic again for people that don't live in the US. This is classic political theater. Every 2 years, we have elections for our members of House of Representatives and on a rolling cycle, because the senators are in there for 6 years, the House are in there for 2 years. So every 2 years we have House of Representatives that are running for reelect, and every 6 years we have senators, and they're on a rolling because there's 2 senators per state, and they don't typically run for election at the same time. It's one senator 1 year and one senator another. So that's how the system works. And so every 2 years we have House members running for reelect, and usually after the presidential election, the next midterm cycle in 2 years following that, there will be a shift in power usually. So the person that gets voted into the president, their first 2 years, they typically have more power than not. And then at the 2 year mark, that's going to flip. So that's why he's threatening or floating the idea. This is what our politicians do. They float ideas to see whether or not the public gloms onto it and whether or not it's appreciated or not. And so
the reason this is important, though, thank you for the explanation of that. But the reason that this is important is that since so many people are very unhappy with the current administration, during these midterm elections are the opportunities to flip who is in control of the seat. And when you flip who's in control of the seat, then that gives our Congress spaces and those who are shifting over in our Senate spaces, that gives them control over the House and the Senate. And that is how we make a balance of our power with the executive power, which is the president of the United States.
Checks and balances.
Right. Checks and balances. And so right now there is a lot of support. And to me, someone who is existing outside of the political, to me, the Democratic Party is being so conservative that they are mimicking so many things of the Republican ideology and the Republican process, again, because a lot more people than we understood are supporting Project 2025, which is more than 47%, I think. 47%. I
haven't checked the tracker lately. I need to look up that website and check the tracker and see how far they've gotten. I can do that while you're talking if you want.
And that's the blueprint for white supremacy. And I'm just going to name it and say it straight up, straight out.
Yep.
And so a lot more people are supporting this blueprint for white supremacy in the United States in particular. And we're seeing the pushback of the people recognizing what white supremacy actually means, supported by ICE raids, which is looking very much like the past of the Ku Klux Klan, with hooded people going into communities and just taking all people out, no matter whether or not you're of the target. If you're supporting the target, you're a problem and you're getting removed. And then we're seeing a lot of US citizens then rising up against that and saying that this is not at what we had an expectation of, but people are not understanding the impact of what this strategy is in being able to shift the way that the US is power and control as our demographics shift.
Right. I'm going to share screen real quick because I just looked up the Project 2025 tracker. Say that 3 times fast. And I'm going to add it to the stage here. So for those that are watching us and maybe those that are listening too, Project 2025 .observer/en is the website that allows you to track what the progress on Project 2025 is. And you can also look at specific pieces. I've just got it on the main page, but it's reflecting that we've got 51% of Project 2025's policy proposals have been enacted. And then you can see below that total objectives. There's a total of 320 total objectives that are being tracked by this tracker. There are 34 agencies involved in this, in these
agencies.
total objectives. Yeah. And then it gives you a timeline of to the end of Trump's first term, or this term, because technically this is his second term, so he should not be able to run again, but we'll see. We've got 1,097 days left, 20 hours, 57 minutes left in his term. So, but you can also,
when you say we'll see, what do you mean by that?
Well, there have been suggestions that he's never going to leave office. I mean, if he's able to cancel the midterm elections, which are supposed to happen this November, then technically he could cancel the presidential election that's supposed to happen, 3 years from now. So there have been, I personally, I don't think he's going to live that long, quite honestly. And not that I'm suggesting that somebody is going to take him out. I don't think physically he's going to live that long. There's a lot of medical experts out there that believe he's got frontal temporal dementia, and that his body systems are already starting to shut down. We're seeing a lot of bruising on his hands, which is classic for sites where they get infusions to try to slow down the dementia. So I'm not suggesting that anybody's going to take him out. I think nature's going to take him out. So, but yeah, that's what I mean by he's supposed to have 1,097 days left, but we'll see. So
yes, and 1,097 days is a lot of days.
It's a lot of time. It's a lot of time
to be dealing with all of the things that we've been experiencing under this administration. That is harmful to a lot of people, and so it's for us to be on our toes, to remain on our toes, to remain vigilant about like checking in with what the impacts are to you and to your community, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to speak into, we were just talking about the two-party system being that divide and conquer foundation, that structure.
Yeah.
But I also want to speak into, because we touched on this a little before we went live, what it could look like to not be locked into that, right? So our country not being locked into the two-party system, which is just a tool of the divide and conquer. That if we were allowed, and I'm going to say allow because right now our structure does not allow for more than what we've got. If we were allowed to have more parties, more people running under other banners, which other countries do, other democracies do, and we see a little whisper of it every 4 years during the presidential where there's a Green Party candidate or a Independent Party candidate. If we were actually able to have those other candidates from other parties running at the same time, and we did not have only the two parties that dominated money and control. Right now we don't have primaries that are anything other than Democratic and Republican. And in any state that does not have an open primary, if you're not a registered Democrat or a registered Republican, you can't vote in the primaries. So even if you might be registered independent, there is no independent primary. So that's just a whisper of like why this doesn't work. But if it did, we would have open primaries that anybody could vote for any of the elected officials under any of the categories that they may want to be running under. And we could have ranked choice voting, which some states have. California has ranked choice. Have you ever taken part in the ranked choice voting in California? I know you used to live there, but I don't know how long ago it was.
Yeah, I haven't lived there since 2009, but I am not sure what you mean by ranked choice.
So ranked choice voting is typically when someone goes into the polling place when they don't have this option. You have a ballot that has this person or this person. Everybody that's running for that seat is listed, and you only can vote for one person. You can only fill in one box. If you're doing ranked choice voting, you can rank your choices. I like this person first. I like that person second. I like that person third. And it gives you a better understanding of who you're voting for, and the results are tiered. So it's not just one person takes all, they're tiered. And then there can be runoff situations between the tiers. So you can get to a better understanding. So the person that wins actually really wins because of the collective. The collective voting comes together, and they disseminate who is the person that the bulk of the people want. Sorry, just hit my mic. So that's how ranked choice voting can help whittle down, and it's not just winner takes all from you can only vote for one person. So the New York voting, New York, and I'll make this point and then I'm sorry to interrupt you. The New York voting, when they voted for mayor, they did ranked choice voting. And so that's why you heard a lot of people, if you were listening to the chatter around Zohran Mamdani running for mayor, they were saying, don't vote for Cuomo at all. Don't rank him at all, because it was ranked choice voting in the primary, and they wanted the bulk of the voters to vote for Zohran. So they were encouraging people to not even rank Cuomo. Don't even place him in the list. So that would be another way.
That was a victory for people power in New York, having the mayor.
Oh, it was huge.
The history of New York is like a majorly huge thing. And so it actually is a wonderful demonstration of what people power looks like. Yes. That is very, very, very important to make sure that we amplify the spaces and the places where we see people power actually winning. And
the other thing I'll offer to get us out of the two-party is the money. Getting the money out of, because money is the dominant force in our elections. And because people can put so much money into elections, they can tip the scales. And gerrymandering is another thing that, that tips the scales. But so the power of the people is divine. But that's why they're working so hard to make it look like the people have no power. So
yes. And we have to stop doing this divide and conquer component of what is happening, because redistricting is another part of a divide and conquer, and trying to coalesce people power and all of that kind of thing. So we know what the strategies are. Now we just have to be in the energy of dismantling.
Yeah. And you challenged me, because I said at one point before we went live, I said that I was downloading, that it wasn't coming from me. It was just downloading. And you said, you're not downloading, you're remembering.
Yeah. So I would offer that the downloads have already come down. We've already have the information, and now it's just to remember the information and to harness our power to be able to shift this vibration that we're on, because it's not the one that we need to be on. And especially as our collectivism and our target, quote unquote, thing that is going to be in opposition to us, because I'm not going to use the word enemy, but it's going to be humanity working with and to manage how quickly technology is evolving. Right. I'm choosing my language.
I'm trying to decide if I need to go back out there and get a landline.
That's
what I'm trying to figure out.
Keep your people closer.
Yeah. And go back to what we were laughing about. I'm watching Game of Thrones right now, and they used ravens. So it's time to send the ravens.
Send the ravens.
So we need to send the ravens. We need to figure out other ways to communicate with each other.
Crawlers. All right.
So
until next time, sending ravens out.
Yep, send the ravens out. All right, my friend. I will see you at our next one. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, as you move throughout your day, continue to ask yourself,
Why Do I Give a
Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Deanne. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.